Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, children of all ages, this is Josh Powers.
And I am John Moore.
And we're the hosts of The Cheap Seats, brought to you by Public House Media each and every Tuesday. We're here to talk sports.
And anything else you can think of that has to do with sports. Bottom line is, we are your conduit. We are fans just like you. We're talking about the stuff that we know that you're talking about around the water cooler.
Once you've finished listening to the following broadcast on Public House Media, we hope you'll come and check out our show, The Cheap Seats, every Tuesday on all of your favorite podcast platforms. You'll find us way up here in The Cheap Seats.
Hey, this is Lee.
And this is Chelsea.
And we are the host of your new favorite sales podcast, See Jane Sell.
Join us every Thursday for a new episode where we will tackle the realistic world of sales and maybe teach you a thing or two along the way.
You can subscribe to See Jane Sell on Apple Podcast, Google Podcast, iHeartRadio, CastBox, and Spotify. Thanks, and enjoy the following podcast on Public House Media.
I'm Maddie. And I'm Jess. Welcome back to another episode of Proud and Dangerous.
It's getting weird.
We're in my apartment this time.
We are, yeah. We've been trading off because, I don't know.
We live far away from each other now.
We do. We're long distance.
We are.
We're in
but
separate
we're
cities.
It work.
You know. We do what we gotta do.
Distance makes the heart grow fonder.
That's what they say. Except you hate me more than now that I'm gone.
Not true.
No, you still come and swim in my pool.
I do. I'm a user for the pool.
Excellent. Well, welcome back to episode 24.
It feels like it's been a really long time.
I feel like it's been forever since we recorded. I think it's just because we had to redo our little schedule.
We do not look back, we look forward.
That's okay, yes. Yes, love that.
We don't do negativity.
So last episode, we did a little bit of a recap on state pageants because by the last time that we recorded, they were just wrapping up. So we now have a full class of Miss America candidates, and we are still waiting on a location and a date.
Yes.
I'm pretty sure. I've seen things, though, about an announcement coming soon because my friend Kat, who is Miss Minnesota right now, she said that they'd be announcing very shortly.
Exciting.
Yeah. So we'll see where that'll be.
We'll have that info.
Yeah. We'll share that. That'll be fun.
We can also talk a little bit about some news, pageant news. I didn't even tell you this today. I meant to text you and tell you this article.
I feel like I've been out of the loop.
Okay. So Laura Kepler-Fleiss, did you read this today?
What, that she's getting divorced?
Besides that.
What?
Okay. I'll give you the lowdown.
Okay. Ooh,
so,
juicy.
About a week ago, it came out that Mike Fleiss, creator, producer, whatever, of The Bachelor, is divorcing Laura Kepler-Fleiss. So basically, from what my understanding is from people who have told me that she was a former Miss Kenosha, turned Miss Wisconsin, and then she was competing at Miss America. Mike Fleiss was a judge there, and I heard that he just saw her and was like, okay, this is my end game.
Yeah.
So he was married to someone for 25 years with kids, got divorced from her, started pursuing Laura. I heard not let me know. I don't know if this is true, but I heard that he was really persistent. And she was like, I don't know.
Ooh.
But anyways, it worked. They got married, live in LA, Hawaii, the whole 9 yards.
Living the dream.
4-year-old son named Ben. It's great. But then it just came out. My sister sent me this over Twitter last night that she put a restraining order against him because he's abusive. Oh. He calls her horrible derogatory names, threatens her. It allegedly says in her report that he tells her that she's going to end up, quote unquote, fat and single in Kenosha. That and the reason he's been doing this is because she's 10 weeks pregnant and he wants her to have an abortion. And he told her that if they get the abortion, everything will go away. But he says he doesn't want to have another kid because he's way older than her. He's 55. And he said, I knew I'd have to give you a kid because you were 26 when we got married. But I don't want a second one. And he's like, if you want a second one, he's like, I'm not paying for the abortion, but you have to go get it. And he was asking to see medical records and like bookings from like the hospital. It's this huge story. Honestly, go look it up or we'll post it, whatever.
Yeah,
why don't
we'll post it. We'll post it on Facebook.
But that's crazy. It's pretty graphic. And she said that he just uses his wealth and money, or wealth and money is the same thing, wealth and power over her just to, hold her. And there's a prenup involved, and then he has his side. Well, apparently she also has like security footage, and she shows like bruises and like a ripped dress. And then he has his side where he said that she's the one who like ran away and disappeared, and he doesn't know where they are. So it's this huge drama fest, but it's just sad, and it hits home because she's from Wisconsin.
Yeah.
So.
Oh, wow. What a nightmare.
It just sounds kind of sad, and it'll be interesting to see the update. She was granted the restraining order, but she also wants sole custody of Ben, and I think her baby that's unborn, and the house in Hawaii.
What a nightmare, though. Like, could you imagine being 10 weeks pregnant and having to go through all of this? And it's also very, very public.
Right.
Oh.
And do you follow her on Instagram?
Yeah.
I do too, and like you can tell she's obsessed with her son. So I can't even imagine like
she loves him so much. But I never see him,
I
never see Mike around. It's literally just been her for the past however many years that they've been together.
What's weird that when the divorce thing came out, everyone was kinda like, oh, that's weird. Like nobody really saw that coming. But now that this is coming out, it's like, wow, there's so many signs. Happens. Yes.
Yeah.
It's crazy.
How weird.
But wow.
Oh,
sad.
Yeah. I know.
So yeah, we'll have updates on that. Maybe go follow the story, but it's just sad and shows you how. To me, what I kind of saw it too is like you can be on top of the world. Like she won Miss America.
So happy,
he created this $1 billion show, and then it's like
fame and fortune.
All of it comes crashing down. It's just sad to see, especially when there's kids involved and things being thrown out here and there, allegations, and no one knows. But
how sad.
These things are never easy. They're never happy, and it's just
no. Oh,
I know.
I'm sad.
Me too. Let's change gears.
Yeah, let's change gears. We have an exciting episode.
We have a guest on today.
Woo-hoo!
And it's all about judging, which we haven't done yet. We've done so many different title holders and volunteers, but now we're doing a judge. And
we want to do a judge.
We're going to dish the juice and see what's going on behind the judges' table. Those meetings that happen, what they look for, like the worst experiences they've had.
Yeah,
like
some do's and don'ts, mistakes that contestants make.
Yes, and our guest is someone who dishes brutal honesty.
Oh, we love it. Some of you will know who he is, but I
just had back. So
Baxter. So we'll just take a short break and we'll be right back with Baxter Colburn.
This is Jenna Burt, host of the Confessions of a Military Spouse podcast here on Public House Media. Thanks for listening to the following broadcast on Public House Media. Once you're done with this episode, I hope you'll come check out my show, Confessions of a Military Spouse, where we dig deep and talk about the unspoken hard truths of what it's really like to be a military spouse. A new show comes out bi-weekly. Don't forget to subscribe on iTunes so you never miss an episode of Confessions of a Military Spouse. Thanks again for checking out the following broadcast on Public House Media.
All right, we are back with Baxter Colburn, who has judged a handful of Miss America locals. And we're so excited to have him on because, I mean, we let him in with high expectations because we know that he's going to be really honest. Maddie's dancing next to me. We're so excited. We've known Baxter and we're very close, and we're excited for all of you to get to know him a little bit better and learn more about what happens behind the judges table. So Baxter, welcome.
Thank you very much, ladies. I'm thrilled to be here, and it's a distinct honor and pleasure. Long-time listener, first-time guest.
Oh, yeah. You've listened since episode 1.
That's true. That's very true.
And you recruited us for this role.
I have. Yep. And I'm very, very excited and very happy about my decision to do so.
Oh,
until this interview. So we'll find out.
I just want to say it's so weird. switching places almost, because I feel like, well, first of all, Baxter and I are BFFs. Like, don't worry, Jessica, like, you'll get there someday. But
yeah, to be fair, Jess and I go back farther than you and I do, Maddie. Just being honest.
True.
But Maddie still has a special place in my heart, not to squash Maddie's love and affection.
I would hope not, since we work on literally like 3 projects together.
Seriously. We're joined at the hip.
We pretty much are. But I was just going to say, it's so weird being on this end of it, because I feel like usually I'm the one, well, I guess I am always asking Baxter questions, but like he's the one who's always just like the guiding force for me. Now we're guiding the interview.
Yeah.
Which
That's
is
exciting. I'm all for it.
I am the Baxter. You are the Madeline today.
Roll switch.
Well, let's hop in.
Let's hop right in. All right. Well, first, I guess just tell us about you and your experience.
How you got connected.
How you got connected to Miss America and the whole pageant world.
Sure. So I'm married to Miss Unalaska 2010. She was Liz Calhoun. Liz Colburn is my wife. So I got involved. When we were dating in college, there was a Miss West Allis New Berlin pageant right by our college, because we went to school in Milwaukee. And she was like, "Hey, do you want to go to this with me?" And I think she might have even known people that were competing. I honestly have no idea, because it was kind of out of left field in my mind. I'm like, you want to do what? Sure. Okay. Yeah. I have no idea. We went and it was fine. I didn't think much of it. But then her niece started to get involved with the pageant, and then her sister, Madeline Anderson, as well, started to get in, who was Miss Unalaska 2012, I believe. She came after Miranda Schmidt, if that's the order, if I'm remembering correctly. So I was heavily in the Miss Unalaska organization for a while. I am and always will be a West Side guy, so I will always support the West Side girls. So I've become very good friends, and just in general a big fan of all the organizations out on the west side of the state. And it's always funny because I've always lived on the east side of the state, but the west side has my heart and always will. So from going to Miss Seven Rivers, I kind of followed my niece Abby and my sister-in-law Madeline to their pageants when Liz and I started to date and get more serious, and Liz was done running. And eventually just started having conversations with different directors. Miranda Schmidt at Miss Unalaska. I'm blanking on Abby's last name. Who is
Abby Ryan.
Abby Ryan. Talked to Abby a couple of times and said, "Hey, if you ever need judges or you need a fresh face, or there's never any young guys that are judging anymore. It's always either really old or or former dads or whatever." And Abby Ryan finally called me. How long ago was that, Jess? 4 years ago now? 3 years ago?
2017.
Yeah, so I was only 2 years ago. Come on.
That's crazy.
Yeah, 2.5, 3 years ago. It was only 2 years ago. Abby Ryan called me and said, "Hey, do you want to come judge Miss Seven Rivers?" And I said, "Sure, yeah." I mean, it's up, and we made a weekend of it. It was the weekend of my birthday, so it kind of just tied all in. So I got thrown right into a West Side pageant and open, which was crazy. That's how I met you, Jess, for the first time, and met others, and just kind of got to be in the world officially. And I was insanely nervous the very first time, but it was a ton of fun. And then just most recently, just back in February, Tara, she's not Tara Pizer anymore. She's, what is she now? I forget.
Weigel.
Tara Weigel. She asked me to judge Miss Madison. So I was down with her. I got to experience that whole central side of the state, and had a ton of fun with it as well.
So cool. Yeah, I met you behind the judges table, which
you
is
did.
really weird.
You did, yeah.
Yeah, that's super cool. But I mean, we know Liz, and I just think it's cool that your experience in this organization stems from her, and now it's just carrying into so much more after that. It's just so precious. Your relationship is also built on pageants.
It is. I know. It's amazing. Like, the funny part about it is that if you didn't know me from anything and you stole my phone and you said, "I'm going to stalk Baxter's Facebook or Instagram," it's 3 things. It's sports, it's beach body coaches, because my wife and I are beach body coaches, and it's pageant girls. And you'd be like, "What the heck is wrong with this guy? Like, he is such a creep. He's weird." But I'm friends with all of the people that I'm like, but it's just, if you didn't know any difference, you'd be like, these 3 things make absolutely no sense. And then there's some random podcast stuff tossed in there as well. But it's funny because people will be like, "Whoa, like, what's that?" I'm like, no, like, it's not like that. I'm like, I'm friends with so many amazing women. and it just have, hey, it's a cool thing to be a part of, honestly. But yeah, it's kind of funny because not many guys, especially, are trying to keep track of what's going on with the Miss America organization.
Right. Oh, it's awesome. We're glad that you're a part of it.
Glad to be here.
Aww.
Maddie's like, move on. Here we go.
All right, next segment.
Moving on.
Okay, so let's go through like a pageant day experience. Mm-hmm. So when you arrive there, tell us, what's the judges meeting like? What's the paperwork they give you? Is there anything significant that stood out to you before you started? Especially, you said you were pretty nervous for the first one, and you've done a few. So what are maybe differences? Are they all kind of the same thing?
Yeah. I guess what happens when you accept a position as a judge? Yeah.
So there's always some upfront stuff that you have to do. The judges always have to send in a short bio and a picture, and there's a little bit of communication ahead of time with the director, just about, here's the dress code, here's the pageant contestants ahead of time. So we get all the pageant contestants paperwork maybe a week or two before the actual pageant, especially for opens. It's very helpful because more often than not, especially if you're just connected, because the directors actually reach out to you and say, hey, I noticed that you're Facebook friends with this, and this. You need to unfriend them until after the pageant. And I was like, there was only, I think, one person that I had been friends with for Miss Madison that actually ended up winning another title. So it didn't even matter at that point. But it was interesting, because they're like, they don't want any bias. And I mean, and as a judge, obviously that's the plan, is to not be biased and, unbiased as possible. But the judges meeting in the morning, the first time, was super intimidating because, like I said, I was this new kid on the block. There's always a former miss. I feel like the couple of times I've judged, there's always been some former miss. So that's always intimidating because you feel like, they have these high expectations of how it should be run because this is their chance to finally right whatever wrongs maybe happened to them. And then there's always a couple of pageant moms and or former directors. So walking in, I'm always this, I feel like, fresh-faced, squeaky clean guy walking and be like, I like Miss America. It's like, okay. Like I'm like, they're just like, who are you? But I always feel like because I'm not ingrained totally in the culture, that I bring a different view, and I'm able to be far more unbiased and not swayed by some of the pageant tricks or some of the other things that contestants might try to do. So I remember being super nervous for the first one, but when I walked into Miss Madison, I was very confident. I knew my opinions. I knew where I stood. I knew the contestants fairly well, and I knew that it was going to be a ton of fun. And it was. And it ended up being a really, really, that was my favorite judging experience so far.
So cool.
And I'm curious too, how much does seeing the paperwork before the pageant influence you on contestants? Like, do you have a vision of someone, or is it most like, okay, this is their platform, then I don't really care? Or is it like... Do
you have an idea of who will do well based on their paperwork?
No, I don't. And some judges might, but for me, when I read paperwork, for me, I'm a people person. I read you so much better in person than I do on words on a page. I think anybody can hide behind a good essay or hide behind a good book or, whatever your words might be. So I'm very good at diagnosing a person in person. So I try to get a general knowledge so that way I can formulate my questions ahead of time and, kind of get an idea. But until that contestant walks in the room and makes eye contact with you for the first time, do you then all of a sudden say, okay, I understand these 5 or 6 things that I had already kind of thought or pulled together from your fact sheets. But I very much do all of my judging when they walk in the room, as opposed to having this pre-formulated idea of like, oh, contestant 4, 7, and 10 should be my top 3, because I don't feel like that's fair, and I don't feel like that's the right way to do it.
Sure. And I have a 2-part question. My first one is, people say that within how many seconds of meeting someone for the first time, you know if you're going to give them the job or not, like just in general life. So wondering, when somebody walks in, how big is first impression to you? And then, answer that one first.
Sure. First impressions, I think, are huge because I think that sets the tone for the rest. And then all of a sudden, when you find a good contestant, that's your bar. And then all of a sudden you're judging against the bar. And this, and I mean,
yeah.
And I was going to say, and I mean no disrespect to the contestants that I've seen. Miss Madison was the first time that I could not leave interviews saying contestant 3, 6, and 4 are my top 3. I had no idea because I either wasn't totally wooed or I wasn't totally disappointed. It wasn't they were all average. It was a very good crop of gals that competed at Miss Madison, but nobody walked in the room and blew my socks off. Whereas when I was at Miss Seven Rivers, there was 2 that walked in that I was like, wow, that's my bar mentally. And then you try not to be their cheerleader, but you're kind of like, okay, I kind of hope that girl does good now the rest of the day because I liked her in her interview.
That's so interesting.
Do you think then, we have a question, like, do you compare contestants to each other? Because they say, like, every person will say, you're not competing against anyone.
Yourself.
You're just, you're just being your best you. But I think it's human nature to compare.
Right.
And it's like, how can you almost not?
Right.
Because, again, I've even experienced when you really like someone, you're rooting for them. Also that leads to previous discussions we've had.
Mm-hmm.
Does that influence your scoring? Do you upscore them because you like them in an interview?
Right.
Or do you have to judge really fairly because you need to give everyone the exact same chance?
Right.
Thoughts,
Yeah.
Baxter?
Yeah. What are your thoughts? Yeah. How do you judge a contestant? Like,
I think it's a great question. I think it's one that I think a lot of parents and friends and family think of in the audience as well, or even the contestants on the stage.
Mm-hmm.
To say that you don't judge contestants against each other is a lie. I would never. It's impossible. It's impossible not to, because contestant 2 answered the question that we also asked contestant 1, but contestant 2 said it better and said it more fluidly. So I like contestant 2 now better than number 1. But contestant 5 now did it better than number 1, but not as good as number 2. So now you're running these numbers in your head as you're going along. As soon as we get into the thick of it on stage and everything's happening, in my opinion, everybody gets a clean slate every round. You could kill it in challenge, but your on-stage question could be awful. And that's okay. Sure. I'm not going to be like, well, because contestant 3 blew my socks off with her evening gown and she was awful at swimsuit or whatever. It shows my, I'm obviously Miss America 1.0 favorite right now, but that I'm not sitting there saying, well, because they were good here, that's going to carry them across the board, because you have to be good in every area to win, in my opinion.
Do you think other judges have done that though?
Absolutely.
I think so too. I mean, I feel like that's sometimes how you might have a result that is a little bit surprising.
Yes.
That some judges will maybe throw some scores in other areas
yes.
where they weren't entirely deserving of those scores, just to get a certain contestant to win, which is sketchy.
And it's funny you bring that up, because that was a thought that I had even leading up to this. So Miss Seven Rivers was, and I know it was my first time, but I knew that there was a feeling in the room walking in, and even the discussions going on, that the other judges had already picked the winner.
Interesting.
And I caught on to that fast, because there was a lot of, it was very obvious who they wanted to win, in my opinion, and whether or not they were trying to hide that or not, it just kind of felt like the way that the conversations were being had, the way that things were just kind of being done, it felt like, okay, this is the obvious choice to be the next person. And ultimately that was the person that ended up winning. Whereas for me, I had a fresh lens. I had never, judged before. So some people were probably like, well, you didn't know any better. You don't know how the game works. I don't think there should be a game personally.
Right.
So I had the person, and I remember talking to Liz on the drive home, and she was like, well, what did you think? And you obviously have to be, there's a certain level of things you can and cannot say. And I said it very bluntly. I was like, the person that I thought should have won did not win. And she was like, well, do you like the person that did? I'm like, yeah, I'm like, the person they picked is fine. I'm like, he's going to do a good job. She'll represent the area well. I was like, but in my opinion, the best candidate did not win.
Got it. How weird.
So do judges talk about contestants outside of writing down scores, between interviews? Yeah. Do they talk?
I know that's kind of isn't that kind of a no?
You're not. It's communicated to us in the pre-judges meeting. You're not allowed to ask questions. You're not allowed to talk about other contestants. Newsflash: everyone does.
Oh yeah.
Okay. I was gonna say, do people even say or comments like "wow" or or
well, a big thing, at least that I remember, at least, is that you're not supposed to laugh. You're not supposed to like if a contestant says something funny, you're not supposed to laugh to indicate that you like them.
I've had judges laugh a lot.
Yeah.
And I was like, what? I'm like that. And that was only really driven in at Miss Madison. That was kind of a reoccurring thought. I was like, you're not supposed to laugh. But a couple of us did, because there was some funny moments that happened and that nobody can contain themselves. But I could kind of feel like everyone was kind of like, huh, and then they kind of like, okay, maybe we shouldn't laugh. But I was like, I feel like the fact that people overthink so much of what happens, and I get it. There's the pageantry of it. There's the tradition. It's very Catholic of them. It's like, this is how it's been done. This is how it will always be done. Stick to tradition. Do not deviate from the plan. And it is awesome the way that the organization is set up, as far as, the women's empowerment, the scholarships, everything that goes into it. But the judging side of it is so hard, because you put 5 different people with 5 different opinions in a room, and there's always going to be some sort of a conflict or some sort of, not cohesiveness to an extent. I felt that the panel that we had at Miss Madison was phenomenal, and everybody agreed after the fact. We all walked out and said, wow, that was really well done. And we all felt very confident with the person that won. And we all felt that the proper person did win, but none of us were pushing each other or pressuring each other along the way, being like, "Ooh, we shouldn't give that contestant more love," because it was so open. And I think we even had that discussion, the 3 of us, afterwards, because you were at that pageant, and just being like, it was kind of anybody's game, honestly. And we were very happy for Kylie that won, and it was she's done a great job.
Yeah, I think it's just like it's so strange to me, though, that you say I assume both judging panels that you've been on have been fine, but it's funny that you say when there's one panel that is so strict on, what you should and shouldn't do, and there's another that may not be as strict. So I feel like the variances between judging panels can also, it clearly varies.
But it's also
results.
different now with 2.0.
Right. And so I'm curious.
And final ballots.
Yes. I'm curious how it would be, though, with final ballot, how that would be in the judging room, because then judges do collaborate.
Have you judged with final ballot, Baxter?
I have not. Nope. Both times have been without final ballot.
What's your just
general
thoughts on final ballot?
I think final ballot is helpful if the judges don't play favorites along the route. Final ballot, my first time, because I mentioned the person that I thought should have won, I would have gotten demolished in the judges' room, because I would have probably been the only person fighting for the one contestant I thought should have won. Whereas, like I said, I felt the entire panel outside of myself was all pushing hard for the other contestant early into the day. I think it would have been really helpful for Miss Madison, because honestly, when I submitted my final scores, I remember leaning over to the judges to either side of me. I was like, I don't know who's going to win. Mm-hmm. And so I was just as surprised as the rest of the audience when we all found out, because I didn't feel like there was a strong enough inkling. And I could be totally wrong how the other judges may have felt. But for me personally, I was like, I judged fairly. I judged across the board. And I said, yep, this is how I feel. But I wasn't running the numbers in my head enough to be like, oh, okay, mathematically I gave these scores. Okay, this contestant should probably win. So I feel like final ballot would have been really helpful for Miss Madison, just because we could have actually all collaborated a little bit more. Whereas, like I said, I feel like, at least in my position, I would have gotten squashed hard on the Miss Seven Rivers ballot, just because of the premeditated decisions I felt had been made already.
Okay.
And with judging scales, I think this is something that's interesting. Mm-hmm. Especially with, I think, new judges, maybe people who haven't judged as much. I think people who are very I don't want to say like non-confrontational or not harsh, but a lot of people have problems using the full judging scale. Right. And I have always hated that, because it hurts strong contestants. If somebody is really great, you give them a 9. Then somebody who's like pretty bad, and you give them a 6 because you feel bad. You don't like to be mean, even though nobody sees the scores.
Yeah, that girl's never going to know what you scored them with. So it also frustrates me. And we talked about that before, how full judging scale is used. Do you like using the full judging scale, or have you had experiences where people don't use it? What's the line, do you think, between a 1 and a 3, a 10, whatever? Yeah. How do you use the judging scale? So
the judging scale is fascinating to me. I've used the highest. I've given 1 10 in my life, and people are gonna true judges listening and be like, "Why would you do that?" Like, it was, in my opinion, it was flawless. What I had judged at that moment was flawless, and I think the lowest I've ever given was either a 2 or a 3. I don't remember, honestly.
Okay.
So I've used the entire spectrum. I will be honest, a lot of times you are hanging out right around that 4 to 6 range. There's a lot that happens in that 4 to 6 range, and that the difference between a 4 and even a 5 can make or break an entire contestant.
Right.
It's fascinating though, because we ran, I'm not going to name contestants. There was a pre-existing Miss that came in and did a mock interview for us at Miss Madison to just get us ready. And for those that know Joe Newmeyer, he, longtime Miss Madison director, was just sitting in the room and just kind of helping keep the flow of the day. He sat in on all the interviews and just offered feedback to us if we had questions. So this Miss came in, she did this mock interview, and then she left. And we all kind of just, like, okay, just kind of getting warmed up, getting ready before the first contestant walked in. And one of the judges asked Joe, she said, "Joe, what would you rank that interview?" Because I think I'd put her at like a 6. I was like, that was pretty good. She delivered her stuff well. And Joe was like, no, it's probably about a 4. And the entire room just kind of like stopped for a second. And I was like, huh, okay. So then I found myself judging even harder the rest of the day because Joe made the comment. And not that I was just giving away points, but I could tell the entire panel then all of a sudden kind of put an even harder critical lens on, which is important with that experience, like Joe can provide, and others that have done this a long time that know who the right person is to look for. But It was fascinating to me that a couple of us were just like, I gave her a 7, like, oh, I gave her a 6. And he was like, nah, it's about a 4, maybe a 5. And we were all like,
Wow. I always wonder, like, what's the difference between a 4 and a 5?
Well, I've talked to 5. I also want to put in
not much. In my opinion, not much. Mm-hmm. But 4 means you have more work to do, whereas a 5, in my opinion, is like you was all right. You did enough. It's like a C+ or a B-, like you passed. Whereas a B is like, B. If you're throwing out a 3 or a 4, that's close to D+. Like it's not like you could have been better, but you're not failing at the same time. But you're pretty close.
Okay, so I swear I've talked to a few directors though, and they do talk about how you have to judge differently, and 8 at Miss local title is not going to be an 8 at Miss state title,
sure,
or Miss America title, like
sure. Well, I would hope that the number is going to, the higher you get up in the system, and I know people are like, we should be the same across the board. True, it should, but
depends on the crop of contestants.
It depends on the crop of contestants. Miss Wisconsin, if I was judging at Miss Wisconsin and I gave a 4 to, Miss whoever, on her interview or on a whatever, that 4 is, I've already assumed and already held these ladies to a much higher standard because you've already got a title.
Sure.
If I've got 8 girls in a room and one of them's a previous title holder, a 4 is pretty accurate for Susie Q off the street that this is her 7th, pageant running and she's never won, and whatever it is. Or if it's, Molly's first time competing, like a 4 is not awful for Molly, her first time out, a little fresh out of high school girl that I want to give it a shot. But yeah, the higher you go up in the ranks, it is expected that you should be not getting low numbers because you've been there, what you should do. So if anybody's getting a 4 at Miss America, should you have even, and not to question is should you have a title, but what happened? What happened?
Right. That's a good point. But then too, some people could consistently give 9 interviews and they have a bad day, they get a 3,
Sure.
Yeah. And that's the thing. You roll the dice every time with a new panel.
Yeah. That's very true.
Yeah. And that's what, that goes along with the saying, like people say, different day, different panel of judges.
Exactly. Same goes for referees in sports as well. You know, one reffing crew could be awesome and call, a limited amount of penalties or fouls, and the next one, their whistles down their throat because they're blowing it so much. Like, it's ridiculous.
Right. Yeah. How weird. So it's all a crapshoot all the time.
Right.
You really boil it down, yes. Unfortunately, yes.
Yeah. Yeah.
I think it'd be fun. Well, funny.
Oh,
fun.
boy.
I don't know. But what are the big do's and don'ts? And I think do's, everyone's like, make eye contact.
Yeah.
Be
Shoulders
really passionate.
back. Yeah.
All that crap. But
What are some mistakes that you've seen?
What are things that you see consistently? You're like, okay, why do people keep doing this? Or why do people think this is a good idea? Do not do this.
So the big ones are number one is don't overdo it. Don't go full pageant Patty, because I'm going to call your BS on that every time.
I love that.
Have you ever, maybe I shouldn't ask that.
What?
Was it going to be a sellout thing? I was just going to say, like, have you ever interviewed, like, people who majorly sell out?
Oh, I'm sure there's many.
You have to. I mean, the answer is yes. Everyone's selling out it's a job interview. You're going to make yourself look and sound as good as you possibly can to get that job. We've all done it in every job interview we've ever been a part of. That's the whole point.
And then you get into the first day and you're like, wait a second.
Sorry, you're awful.
If you're judging someone that you've judged before, like, do you have a preconceived notion? Because I've had some judges I've had multiple times. And I've had, like, rumors that certain judges have, okay, maybe I should. Well, I don't know.
So
that's
you feel like
episode.
Certain judges have not have been very unfair?
I don't know if it's unfair. I just know there's a hand, or there's one or two out there that really dislike me. And I've had, like, for 3 pageants.
Yeah. I mean, so like I said, I would say don't overdo it. But at the same time, and people are going to be like, express yourself, be your own person. Don't. But at the same time, don't. There's contestants that have just been like, screw the norm. I'm this new hybrid brand version of whatever I want to be. I'm sorry, you're not gonna win. because they try to do too much. They try to overcorrect too much, and they're to their point. They're trying to do the right thing by saying, "I'm not this pageant Patty. I'm going to try to be, G.I. Jane over here and be a little bit more just normal and just be, the average girl. So I'm not all whatever. I'm not wearing makeup. I'm not whatever it is. That's fine, but don't die on that hill. You still have to minorly sell out a little bit." You can't just be full to the left or full to the right. You need to find a middle somewhere. That way the judges aren't like, you're crazy on both ends. Like, just stop.
Right. Well, we've talked about that, even like people who are like, I'm so relatable. Like, I'm always late. I like to lay in bed all day. Like, things that almost like do.
I wear my hair in a ponytail every day.
Well, it's funny that you brought that up, because that was a big conversation we had before Miss Madison, is the whole relatability and the whole, like, how honest is too honest.
Right.
Because it's like, yes, you want to be relatable, but if you're saying that you run late, you're like I said, it all goes back. This is still a job. Like, you can't be late to your appearances. You can't be misrepresenting whatever city, community that you might be in. How are you supposed to then become the state title holder and then a national title holder if you are tardy, or if you're whatever? You have to have that still. It's a fine line, that chemical formula of what the perfect, that's a terrible word, the perfect contestant is so finite. Like, the details, like one tiny little change just blows it all up. Like, you have to find the right formula to be that successful contestant. You can't be a sellout. You can't be too opinionated. You can't have too much makeup on, because that does make a difference to judges. Be like, this girl is not confident in her own skin because you're wearing, the entire Macy's cosmetic department on your face. Like, you need to stop. Like, girl, wash your face, Rachel Hollis right there kind of thing. Like, there's that fine line, because that sends a message to the judges. And I understand, and I don't want to squash anybody that wears a lot of makeup. That's fine. You do you. But I'm telling you, from a judge's lens, it's almost like, okay, you have to do all of this other stuff to feel beautiful in your own skin, when really you don't need to. And maybe that's just me from a man's perspective, telling that to women, like, honey, you don't have to do that. Like, just you find that happy medium without overdoing it.
I think, we've said that. I've had directors too that have said this before, like, be careful. This is just a makeup thing, but be careful on the makeup in your interview, because you're a lot closer than you will be on stage.
Yes, so absolutely.
Walking into an interview room with someone with a clown face on.
I was just saying clown makeup.
Oh yeah, or like the really big like lashes on the eyes. I'm just like, whoa. I'm like, I'm feeling the breeze from your fake eyelashes, and I'm, like, calm down.
So another don't is a very heavy makeup for an interview.
Yes, yeah, very heavy makeup.
Has a contestant ever said, like, one thing in their interview that just kind of made you go, Wow. Really?
Yeah.
Like, or just even like totally turned you off. And then like, can you bounce back from that?
Yeah, I
Yeah.
believe everybody. Okay, this is the hard part because the way that Baxter's mind works is I've come to learn is very different than a lot of other people's. So
I'm so unique.
I'm so relatable.
I'm not saying that I'm like this special little butterfly, but like I've found that the way that I judge people in pageants and just in general in life is a little different. I believe that everyone can slip up. Everyone's going to make a mistake. I almost go into a situation like judging saying, you're going to screw up. I'm waiting for you to screw up, and I want to see how you fix your screw up. So I've almost kind of given them one, if that makes sense. I almost spot you a screw up, so that way I can then see how you mess it up. Because I'd be just as nervous in that situation. You know, like no one is. You can be all poised and confident. I don't care if it's your first time or your 100th time in that interview. You're still sweating, and I can't even imagine being on the other side of the table. So I always, like I said, in my mind, I kind of spot you one screw up in my mind and say, okay, you're gonna stumble on a word. You're gonna ask me to repeat the question. You're gonna say something maybe offensive. It's okay, like within reason.
Right. And I think so many contestants too worry about this. Like if they get one question that doesn't go their way, they're like, I can't come back from this. Or like girls that will let it affect them the entire interview. But I don't know. I always say like your judge doesn't remember every single question that you answered. They remember the.
It's true. It's short. You as a judge are like, all right, get me through this. Let's go to the next one. Okay, we're done. On to the next one. On to the next one. Done. Like you're thinking so much. And one other don't, just to go back to that really fast, that popped in my head is, if you don't feel comfortable talking about it, don't put it on your fact sheet.
Right.
Because the judges will ask you. If you don't want to talk about your abusive father, if you don't want to talk about your whatever it is, don't put it on there. If it's part of your story, girl, own it and have something pre-worked to answer that. But if you don't feel...
I was just going to say I made this mistake my very first pageant. My entire platform was about something that I couldn't talk about.
Right. Because because the judges want to ask you about it and be like, well, cool. Like, I see here that you help,
I cried through that whole interview.
Yeah.
I would pay money to have sat through that interview in the back corner and watch you cry.
Me too. Where's the tape?
Run it back. Where's the tape?
Release the tape.
That'd be so funny.
Oh my God.
And I mean, people are probably thinking I'm this huge jerk to see 17-year-old Jessica cry in an interview. I think it'd be so funny, knowing you now.
Oh yeah, and I would
do it to me too.
Oh yeah, and I think it'd be funny to see that interview versus one of my favorite interviews that I've done and compare the two. Oh yikes!
Wow, I know. I think mine was bad too. Mine was on some cancer thing, and they asked me, it was like the most common form of cancer. I didn't know.
The fact that Maddie even said some cancer thing alone should have been a tip off. Like, that's not your topic, girl.
I don't remember the name of that platform because I had it for one pageant, and it was because it's Mine too. I don't have that sounds so
I'm not passionate about it.
I would rather you say that. Be like, you know what? Listen, I needed a platform. Here I am. I'll do great work for the community, but I don't have a damn clue what you're asking me about.
I don't have any idea.
Well, I never had any. Okay, people at the time, this was really trendy, was to have a sob story platform.
Yeah,
still is.
AKA Jessica crying during an interview.
If it's the right sob story.
And I just didn't have one. I was like, okay, well, I guess I had grandparents die of cancer, so I'll do some cancer awareness. And they're like, let's pick one type of cancer. I'm like, no, let's just do all of them.
I want to do them all.
And they're like, okay. But I remember, I still got first runner up at that pageant, but I remember but the guy had worded it kind of like, what's the worst form? And I was like, well, there's different stages.
All of them.
And then all of the above.
All cancer.
That's what you do. You always pick D, all of the above.
Yep.
But yeah, that was my
but always choose B on multiple choice.
C. If you take the ACT, you always pick C.
is always C.
To get at least an 18 or something.
Interesting.
Yeah, fun fact.
The more you know.
I would love to take ACT again.
Oh, who are you?
I love standardized tests.
Said literally no one ever.
I'm really unique, remember.
Oh, you're so relatable.
Stand out. But yeah, I feel like that's the number one to let me know, Baxter, and maybe it's more of like a recent development, maybe because of 2.0, but I feel like when judges do ask, like, what, like, why should we pick you, or like, what are we looking for? The girls will always say, well, I'm just really relatable. Like,
Can I say that I hate that question from a judge's perspective?
Oh, yeah.
I hate that question.
Baxter, tell us. Sorry, you go first.
No, go ahead.
Go for it. I was just gonna say, like, what would be an ideal answer? Like, something that would really stand out. Like, if you heard it, you'd be like, that's different, unique. Like a tip.
Why should we choose you?
Yeah, like, what would be a good answer to that?
I think a good answer to it is someone that can kind of tie the entire interview in a nice bow. I don't want to hear the sob story again that you just did. Like, yes, we were all just a part of the last 5-6 minutes together, and we shared this moment, and it was beautiful. But finding someone that can kind of wrap it up nicely and say, hey, I believe that based on what I've spoken about before, I believe my platform is capable of making an impact in this community because it's something that I'm passionate about. And I feel that because of, the events that have happened in my life, I have the proper tools to be successful. Something of that nature that reassures me as a judge, saying like, if you pick me, I will do my job and I will do it at a high level.
Right. Yeah. I think for closing statements, especially, I don't know. I was always told that just kind of reiterate everything that you just in your interview.
Yeah. Find a nice wrap up.
Put it in a way that reminds them of how you relate to the role. So whether that be like your business experience, your communication experience, your service experience, putting it all together at the end so they have this lasting impression of who you are and what you're going to do.
Exactly. And I had a couple of girls at Miss Madison do a good job of kind of reiterating the marketing side of it, saying like, I've got a lot of experience in the social media marketing world, which I feel like will help me be able to develop and build the brand of Miss Madison. And for me, I was like, hey, that's good. This is the age right now where that's where a lot of it's going to happen. So you need to have those savvy skills to do that.
Right. Well, and I think people also misconstrue. I think people will go to like Miss State, whatever, and people will say, okay, what's the number one job of Miss Wisconsin, Miss Minnesota, whoever, who cares?
To serve the people.
I think people make the mistake of saying, oh, to promote my platform. And it goes, no, you are there to market the organization.
Yeah, you are the face of the program. This is not about you anymore.
It is
not at all.
Getting assistants, getting sponsors, getting volunteers, princess programs, booking things. I don't care. Like, you're there to market.
Exactly
that's
right.
What you're kicked out. And that's literally how it goes.
That's the end of your year.
Yeah. Bye.
It's that general mistake. And it's like, okay, you just shot yourself in the foot there. That's not what it is. And also read the job description.
Read the job description.
Understand the community as if it's an open. Like, understand what you're trying to do. Don't bring your East Coast, West Coast, Northern, whatever to a Southern pageant. Like, Madison is different than Seven Rivers, which is different from Green Bay, which is different from Door County.
Oh, for sure. Cater to your audience.
Yeah, absolutely. Do your homework. Understand the community. Because the judges are always local people for the most part.
Yeah.
Right. That's a good point.
Very true.
But also, like, don't make the mistake of marketing. Like, if you're doing an open, don't only focus on like super closed mindset.
Exactly.
I think we talked about versus closed.
We did.
Because you do want to talk about how it's Miss State is kind of the ticket there.
Because you, you talked about your experience that 1 year at Miss Lacrosse, that you were just very like state focused.
I went in as like being first runner up to Miss Wisconsin, walking in, being like, okay, like, and that's the thing. I am someone, like, I've never liked competing locally. I love having local titles. Like, Miss Lacrosse was life-changing, so was Wisconsin Rapids. But I'm someone, I don't enjoy competing locally. I'm someone, I love state. I love the whole week. I love prelims. I feel like I'm way better at interviewing at state than I ever am for any local. I always have had trouble winning locals. And I went to Miss Lacrosse being like, Miss Wisconsin, like, I put on my fact sheet. I was first runner at Miss Wisconsin. Big mistake.
Yeah, don't.
Especially because it's also so hard to compare it to anything else because Oktoberfest is so much in itself that like you can't even compare it to like any other closed because it's so community focused.
So I definitely have to cater to
what
the actual job is.
And I went in the next year and I was like, I need to form relationships with these judges in 10 minutes. I need to make them laugh. I need to let them know that I'm here to be that person on the float to shake hands, to get people in the spirit of Oktoberfest. Like, I didn't talk about Oktoberfest, I don't think, in my first interview much at all. And I had just watched my best friend do it for a full year. And I was like, oh, this would be fun. But you just need to learn. But you don't learn that until you're in the swing. You don't really know until you've lost almost.
Exactly. And you have to go through those ups and those downs. You have to win. You have to lose. You have to make mistakes. You have to,
Right.
as Miss Fresel says on Magic School Bus, you have to make mistakes and get messy. Like it's going to happen.
Right.
Well, and I think too, there's some people who come in this organization, and congrats to them, but they come in, they win their first local and then win Miss State.
Mm-hmm.
But it's like you're not really reaping the benefits of the organization because you're not doing trial and error. You're not saying what works, what doesn't, how am I getting better? It's, hey, I did this my first time, I won this my second time, or I won both in a row.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, okay, but what did you learn?
Mm-hmm.
You didn't.
Right.
Yep.
So the way it's almost, you almost have to look at it as, okay, maybe like we don't have this Miss State title, but we learned so much about ourselves.
Yep.
We improved so much.
Mm-hmm.
So that's a whole added benefit of losing. So if you're still sad about losing your state pageant the past few weeks, there's your up.
Boom.
Love that. All right. Shall we wrap up?
Let's wrap up.
Let's wrap up. Well, thank you so much, Baxter, for joining us.
Of course. Thank you, ladies. It was a ton of fun.
Do you have any parting thoughts or advice you want to just leave out there that we maybe didn't cover?
I think you guys did a great job. You asked the right questions, and I hope that what I said was helpful for either people that are thinking about maybe getting into judging or just current contestants that are trying to figure out different ways, as much as, and Jess kind of hit the nail on the head. It is a crapshoot every time, unfortunately, but the biggest thing that you as a contestant should pray heavily for every time is saying that the judges that you have come in with open minds and don't have a favorite before it even starts. Because sure. I feel like that's a disservice to the contestants, and every judge that has ever done that, shame on you, because you need to give every girl the equal opportunity to show their best on the given day.
Right. And yeah, I agree.
I agree with that too.
Thanks for your candor, your honesty, everything all above.
Of course.
All of you.
And I think it's really great too, because I think we've talked in any interview, I think you get worried about like what answers, but like
coming across the right way that you want to.
Right. And, but I think this was very helpful, and it's honest. Baxter's always super honest. Like, I don't think Baxter's ever BS'd once with me.
Never sugarcoats
really cool.
it.
But no, it's really needed in this kind of world, especially with pageants when there is so much
fluff.
This is something that's really needed.
Yeah.
So if anyone's listening, get Baxter as a judge. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yep. All right. We will take a quick break, and we will be back to wrap up. And we are back to wrap up. A huge thank you to Baxter for joining us. We hope that was insightful and helpful, especially if you are planning to get back out there and compete again, just to have a judge's perspective to kind of help you through maybe some adjustments that you want to make.
Let us know if you want us to have other judges on as well, to get other perspectives. If you have someone you want us to interview or have them come on. I think it'd be fun to do a mock interview on a podcast.
Ooh, yeah.
So let us know if you want to hear that. Slide in our DMs, comment, just get a hold of us somehow.
Oh, yeah.
We'll see it.
You know what to do. But before we head out, we just want to do a reminder that we do have a Spotify account with some really fun playlists on them, depending on what your feelings are. If you need a pump up, if you need a sad song, it's on there. You can follow along and add your favorites. Just search Crowned and Dangerous. But yeah, we will let you go until next time. So be sure to follow Public House Media and Crowned and Dangerous on Instagram and like us on Facebook. You can subscribe and rate and review the show wherever you're listening. Comment, email us, slide into our DMs, the usual. We love to hear from you.
We will be back in 2 weeks on August 1st for a brand new episode. As always, this has been Maddie and Jess. Also, side note, just saw this. Our 1-year anniversary will be coming up in August, I'm pretty sure.
Is it August?
Wait, yes, end of August, because we did one before Miss America.
Aww.
We'll be celebrating. Maybe we'll do something fun.
Ooh. I can't wait to plan for this.
Yep. Get ready. So it's been us again reminding you to always wear your invisible crown. Keep it real 100. And if you do not know what to say, world peace.
Bye.